Every war begins with a clear target, and in this one, it is Iran. But wars have a habit of coming with consequences far from what was decided. So could the war that was meant to change Iran's regime end up changing America's instead? I'm Rania Datta. Let's find out. A week after the assassination of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran has named his 56-year-old son Mojtaba Khamenei as the next leader. The man is a bit of a mystery even within Iran. He is the second son of the Khamenei family and has lost his mother, wife and sisters to the war. The younger Khamenei has never run for office or been subjected to a public vote. In fact, the council that decided the supreme leader is the first and probably the last vote Mojtaba Khamenei faced. What distinguishes him from his other brothers is that he moved beyond the conventional role of the supreme leader's son. While his brothers largely remained within the relatively safe confines of cultural or administrative roles linked to their father's office, Mojtaba Khamenei's name has become associated in public discourse with hidden power networks and sensitive security institutions. He began developing close ties within the IRGC from his younger years, when he served in the Habib battalion of the force during the multiple operations in the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. Now, this is the same battalion that trained the now assassinated Qasem Soleimani. The new supreme leader is under US and Western sanctions for building an economic ecosystem spreading across the world. In fact, this investigative piece by Bloomberg from January this year details his properties in London, Dubai, Frankfurt and Mallorca, estimated in the billions of dollars. All while common Iranians have publicly complained of high inflation and the rising cost of living. His unique lifestyle kept him away from the public life, especially in the last few years. In fact, New York Times sources claim that the late Ayatollah Khamenei had indicated to close advisors that he did not want his son to succeed him because he did not want the role to become hereditary, which many would see as hypocritical, since the 1979 Islamic Revolution started with the intention of ending monarchy in Iran. So the decision tells us one thing clearly. Despite risking Khamenei Jr.'s appointment to look hypocritical, the Iranian cleric saw sending a message of continuity to the West as much more important.
The appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei is the reflection of the fact that the hardliners in that system now have the upper hand. Not only are they saying they're going to continue this fight, at least in the short term militarily, but they're also saying politically they have a game plan. And that, as far as I can tell, in Washington, should be a wake-up call, because whatever political agenda President Trump had in terms of changing Iran, right now that agenda is not happening.
24 hours before this appointment, I had spoken to Fouad Izadi, a professor at University of Tehran, and he had said at the time that Mojtaba Khamenei wasn't even a front-runner in becoming the next supreme leader.
I don't take them very seriously, because if they haven't voted, it means that the next leader's name is not identified until a vote is actually taken.
Okay, let's keep the NYT report away since you don't believe in it. But do you think if Mojtaba Khamenei becomes the next supreme leader, the Iranian people who had once launched a revolution against the same monarchy system will feel betrayed?
Yes, we have had this monarchists, especially presenting this idea that Ayatollah Khamenei's son would become the next leader, and the reason they do that is because they want to justify monarchy. I don't know if he's a candidate. I don't know if he would accept even if he's elected, and I don't think he's the front runner when it comes to finding who Iran's next leader is.
He might or might not have been the first choice, but Mojtaba Khamenei is the new supreme leader who will now take the helm not just as Iran's new religious and political authority, but also as the commander-in-chief of its armed forces. And he's not at loss of friends here. Ali Larijani, the current secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and an ex-advisor of the late Khamenei, is an old friend. Larijani has taken center stage in running the country, who can continue being an advisor to the supreme leader. So as the Iranian regime is hurting yet standing and continues to fight against the Israeli and American missiles, where does this leave Trump? Contrary to what you're hearing from Washington, D.C., this war is not going well for Donald Trump. And we're not even talking about the battlefield. Trump is losing something he has usually mastered in American politics: the war of narratives. Look closely, the three fault lines appear. Let's call them the three P's: the promise, the pretext, and the plan. And let's pick it in that order. This US president won office in 2024 after campaigning on a message of no new wars.
You don't have to send your kids out to war, have your kid blown up for a country that you've never heard of and that doesn't want anything to do with you anyway. But I will not send you to fight and die in a foolish, never-ending foreign war.
At least 7 such kids have died in the current war at the time of this recording. Trump has walked back on the very promise that got him the trust of the Americans. And while he can rest in the shadow of the contradicting perception he has created globally, not everyone has that privilege. Like his Vice President J.D. Vance. This is Trump's second and final term. But for Vance, this is what will define his 2028 election campaign. This thought must have been lingering on his mind when he remained conspicuously silent for about 72 hours after Trump declared war against Iran. This former US Marine has long advocated minimizing US military involvement in the overseas conflicts. In a 2023 opinion piece for the Wall Street Journal, he called this Trump's best foreign policy. As those words come back to haunt Vance now, this war will politically burden him in less than 2 years from now. Second is pretext. Why did the US go to war against Iran? 3 different people have tried to answer this simple question.
We were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about it.
They've been killing Americans for 47 years. They have thousands of missiles pointed at us. They have ongoing nuclear ambitions, and they're at the weakest they've ever been.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed.
So the president had a feeling, the defense secretary had historical motives, and the secretary of state blamed Israel. Which one of these is the real reason?
This, by the way, from the shifting stories, for example, the United States administration, right? So on one day they say Iran was going, in a few days or a few weeks was going to have an ICBM that could hit the United States, which is obviously not true, right? Every intelligence assessment that's out there says that Iran was years away from building that type of long-range missile capability that could, for example, hit the United States. On another day, yesterday, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, basically said, well, we knew the Israelis were going to attack Iran no matter what we did. And then we thought Iran was definitely going to attack us. So that's why we decided to attack Iran first, which is just a circular logic that makes absolutely no sense. If you knew that Israel was going to attack Iran, you were supposed to constrain Israel.
And that brings us to our last fault line, the plan. What is Trump planning to achieve in Iran? We know that Trump has laid out 4 objectives. First, destroying Iran's missile capabilities. Second, target Iran's navy. Third, disrupting Iran-backed armed groups in the region. And fourth, making sure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. None of these included killing the 90-year-old supreme leader of Iran, but he died. It certainly did not include bombing a school filled with little girls studying.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
Based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Accent? It was Iran who did that. We're certainly investigating. Still investigating. The only side that targets civilians is Iran.
Its own intelligence suggests that Americans were likely behind the attack. It also did not include controlling the regime, but Trump says he must be involved in picking Iran's next leader. That did not happen. So promise, pretext, and the plan. All three fault lines staring at American voters as they try to figure out what their government is up to. You see, markets have been fluctuating with consumer staples among the worst performing stocks. Energy prices are soaring because of shipping disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. At a time when oil has reached $100 a barrel, the president is calling it a very small price to pay for the US. Pentagon officials have told the Congress that the US has burnt $6 billion of taxpayers' money in the first week of the war. These facts are frustrating an average American. A YouGov poll that was taken in the first 3 days of the war showed that more people disapproved of the war than approved it. 23% Americans strongly approved of the war, while 37% strongly disapproved of it. 14% said they somewhat approve, and 16% said they were not sure. Along the party lines, the Democrats and the Independents had a majority of disapprovals, very expected, and among the Republicans, there was a half and half between strongly approved and everything else. And this war is taking place in a midterm election year. Remember, Trump received a trifecta win in an election that marked the biggest political comeback. A trifecta win meant that his party controlled the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. But so much has happened since November of 2024. The Republicans are up against a collection of Democrats and Independents who make up just under 60% of the voters. Add the factor that many Americans are outraged by the president's behavior during this war, and you have a winning coalition of the opposition in the midterm elections. Now the US president is saying that the war will end soon. This comes after the Wall Street Journal claimed that some of Trump's advisors privately urged him to consider an exit plan in the wake of rising oil prices and a political backlash at home. While the White House has denied these claims, Trump's recent statement says otherwise.
We want a system that can lead to many years of peace. And if we can't have that, we might as well get it over with right now.
And even if this war ends soon, very soon, in a week or two, it will leave Americans with more questions than answers. What exactly did the US achieve in Iran? What's the guarantee Iran won't become a quote-unquote threat in 6 months again? And what happens if Trump chooses Israel first over America first? These are some of the questions we are raising today. If you have answers to them, please comment below and let us know. I'm Ananya Datta. Thanks for watching.